Human blood dripped from the bulkhead of the shattered exploration vessel, pooling on the cold metal floor next to the lifeless body of a young boy, his small fingers still clinging to a toy spaceship. Admiral Frank Adams stared at the holographic projection of the destroyed ship, the latest victim of the ruthless Nasat Empire's aggression. Tears streamed down his face as grief consumed him. His own son was among the casualties. The Nasat had attacked without warning or mercy, obliterating the small vessel simply for straying too close to their territory. Adams slammed a fist on the console, the sound echoing through the somber command center of the Terran Federation flagship. He had warned the Council about the growing Nasat threat, but they had been hesitant to act. Now, one of the greatest strategic minds of the Federation channeled his anguish into cold, calculated fury. He stormed into the council chambers, his eyes blazing with barely contained rage as he addressed the gathered leaders. The Nasat have crossed a line. They're expanding rapidly, conquering and enslaving other races. Their technology is superior to ours. If we don't act now, they will soon be at our doorstep, and humanity's very survival will be at stake. The council members murmured amongst themselves, fear and indecision plain on their faces, until Adams played his trump card. We have been preparing for this day. For years, our shipyards have been secretly constructing a fleet of state-of-the-art dreadnoughts, each one capable of obliterating an entire planet. I propose we send a force of 500,000 of these mighty vessels to the heart of the Nasat Empire. We will make them pay for every drop of human blood they've spilled and liberate the galaxy from their tyranny. A hush fell over the chamber as the sheer scale of the proposed retaliation sank in. Never before had such a vast armada been assembled in human history. The Council quickly realized they had no choice. The survival of humanity and countless other civilizations hung in the balance. They authorized the mission, placing their faith in Adams and the might of Terran vengeance. As the dreadnoughts prepared for departure, their hulls gleaming in the light of Earth's sun, Adams stood on the bridge of his flagship, his hand resting on the small toy spaceship his son had cherished. "I will make them pay," he whispered, his voice filled with icy determination. "For my son, and for every soul they've ever harmed, the Nasat will learn the true power of human wrath." The engines roared to life, propelling the armada towards a confrontation that would decide the fate of the galaxy itself. In a dazzling display of human military might, the massive Terran dreadnought fleet burst forth from hyperspace, materializing on the fringes of the Nasat home system like avenging angels. The sheer number of human ships blotted out the stars, their hulls gleaming coldly in the light of the system's sun. Admiral Adams stood on the bridge of his flagship, his eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Nasat system. With a few swift gestures, he deployed his fleet, the dreadnoughts gliding into formation to surround the system from every conceivable angle. The Nasat, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human armada, scrambled to mount a defense. Adams opened a comm channel to the Nasat Emperor himself. "Emperor Kraxon," he began, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your unprovoked attack on our peaceful exploration vessel was an act of war. The blood of innocent humans is on your hands. I demand the immediate and unconditional surrender of the Nasat Empire. Failure to comply will result in the total annihilation of your species." Kraxon's response crackled over the comm, his tone defiant and arrogant. "You dare threaten the mighty Nasat Empire, human? We will never bow to inferior beings such as yourselves. Our technology is centuries ahead of your primitive toys. Prepare to be crushed beneath the heel of the Nasat." As if on cue, the Nasat fleet moved into defensive positions around their key worlds and infrastructure. Advanced warships, dripping with weapons, formed a protective screen, while planetary defense platforms powered up their energy shields and charged their devastating plasma cannons. Adams studied the tactical readouts, his mind racing as he analyzed the Nasat's defenses. With cold precision, he devised a multi-pronged attack strategy designed to overwhelm and neutralize the enemy forces. He assigned specific targets to each battle group, aiming to systematically dismantle the Nasat's military capabilities piece by piece. The battle erupted with a fury that shook the very fabric of space. The Terran Dreadnoughts unleashed a storm of advanced weaponry, graviton torpedoes and antimatter missiles, streaking through the void to slam into Nasat warships with devastating force. Hulls crumpled and engines exploded as the human weapons found their marks, the superior firepower of the Dreadnoughts proving too much for the Nasat to withstand. Despite their vaunted technological superiority, the Nasat struggled to hold the line against the relentless onslaught of the human fleet. The Dreadnoughts' shields shrugged off the searing blasts of the Nasat's plasma cannons, while their own weapons tore through the enemy ships with brutal efficiency. As the battle raged on, Adams received a crucial piece of intelligence. Emperor Kraxon himself was commanding his forces from a heavily fortified palace on the Nasat homeworld. Sensing an opportunity to cut the head off the snake, Adams ordered a special operations team to infiltrate the palace and capture or eliminate the Emperor. Led by Captain Marcus Reeves, one of Adams's most trusted subordinates, the infiltration team breached the palace's defenses and fought their way to the command center. There, they confronted Emperor Kraxon himself, protected by his elite guard. Reeves and his soldiers took cover as plasma bolts filled the air, the stench of ozone mixing with the coppery scent of blood. The humans returned fire with their advanced rifles, the weapons spitting out high-velocity rounds that punched through Nasat armor like paper. The firefight was brutal and intense, the elite Nasat guards fighting with a fanatic zeal to protect their emperor. But the human soldiers were relentless, their training and drive driving them forward even as their comrades fell around them. The smoke cleared in the palace command center, revealing the lifeless body of Emperor Kraxon. Captain Marcus Reeves stood over the fallen tyrant, his rifle still warm from the final shot. But victory came at a heavy cost. Admiral Adams lay motionless nearby, felled by Kraxon's last desperate attack. In the days that followed, the Terran Federation mourned the loss of Admiral Adams. A state funeral saw millions line the streets of Earth's capital, saluting the man who had led humanity to its greatest triumph. As the casket passed, draped in the Terran flag, many wept openly for their fallen hero. Reeves found himself thrust into a new role, promoted to admiral and given command of the Dreadnought fleet. He stood on the bridge of the flagship, surveying the devastation wrought upon the Nasat home system. Debris from shattered ships drifted silently through space, a grim reminder of the battle's ferocity. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple Nasat signatures," reported his tactical officer. "Small strike groups moving to flank our position." Reeves nodded grimly. So the remnants of Kraxon's forces refused to lay down arms. "Very well. All ships, battle stations. We'll root out every last pocket of resistance." The Dreadnoughts moved with purpose, their weapons systems powering up as they pursued the Nasat holdouts. Reeves coordinated a relentless campaign, methodically destroying the enemy's hit-and-run attackers. On countless worlds formerly under Nasat control, the subjugated populations rose up against their oppressors. Reeves received urgent transmissions from rebel leaders, pleading for aid. "This is Zorax of the Centauri Resistance," crackled one such message. "We've seized control of the capital, but Nasat forces are regrouping for a counterattack. We need support." Reeves wasted no time, dispatching ships and supplies to bolster the rebellion. Similar scenes played out across the liberated territories as the admiral coordinated a massive logistical effort to support the various uprisings. As the liberation campaign progressed, Reeves encountered a dizzying array of alien races. The reptilian saurians proved staunch allies, offering their advanced cloaking technology to aid the human fleet. In contrast, the silicon-based crystallines required extensive humanitarian aid to rebuild their shattered crystal cities. Months after the fall of the Nasat Empire, Reeves stood before a grand assembly on the ruined Nasat homeworld. Representatives from dozens of species filled the makeshift chamber, a kaleidoscope of alien forms and colors. "Today, we forge a new path," Reeves declared. "No longer will tyrants like the Nasat threaten our freedom. Together, we will build an alliance of equals, dedicated to peace and mutual prosperity." The chamber erupted in cheers as species after species pledged their loyalty to the new Galactic Alliance. Reeves found himself appointed Supreme Commander, tasked with safeguarding their hard-won liberation. But even as the Alliance celebrated, troubling reports trickled in from the far reaches of space. Scout ships returned with strange sensor readings, massive structures of unknown origin, energy signatures that defied explanation. In a secure briefing room, Reeves pored over the data recovered from the NASAT weapon facility. His blood ran cold as he deciphered the implications. "Sir," a scientist explained, "these schematics suggest the NASAT were working with an incredibly advanced race. We're calling them the progenitors. It seems they provided the NASAT with much of their technology, including the doomsday weapon plans." Reeves's mind raced. If the NASAT were merely puppets of an even greater power, then their victory might prove hollow indeed. He turned to his assembled staff, his voice grim. "Alert all Alliance worlds. We may face a threat beyond anything we've encountered. I want every available ship mobilized, every scientist working to unravel these mysteries. We've won our freedom. Now we must prepare to defend it." As the briefing concluded, Reeves gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there lurked an enemy of unimaginable power. The true test of the Alliance was yet to come. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood before the holographic display in the command center, his eyes scanning the countless pinpoints of light representing the long-range scouting missions he'd dispatched. Each blinking dot carried the hopes of the Alliance, searching for answers about the enigmatic progenitors. "Status report," Reeves barked, his voice carrying the weight of countless sleepless nights. A young lieutenant stepped forward, her uniform crisp despite the palpable tension in the air. "Sir, we've received a priority transmission from the Arcturus. Captain Hawkins reports a major discovery." Reeves's eyes narrowed. "Put it through." The holographic display flickered, resolving into the image of Captain Derek Hawkins. His face was drawn, eyes wide with a mix of excitement and fear. "Admiral," Hawkins began, his voice crackling with static, "we've found something impossible." As Hawkins detailed their discovery, Reeves felt his breath catch in his throat. A ring-shaped megastructure spanning an entire star system. The implications were staggering. "Approach with caution, Captain," Reeves ordered. "Gather all the data you can, but do not engage unless absolutely necessary." Hours later, Reeves watched with growing unease as the Arcturus neared the colossal ring. The ship's systems began to falter, consoles flickering and alarms blaring. "What's happening?" Reeves demanded, leaning forward as if he could reach through the display and steady the ship himself. "Unknown, sir," Hawkins replied, his voice tight with concentration. "The ring's energy field is wreaking havoc with our systems. We're going to have to get closer, see what we can learn on the ground." Reeves wanted to order them back, to err on the side of caution, but the potential knowledge to be gained was too great. "Proceed, Captain, but at the first sign of serious danger, you pull out." "Understood." "Aye, sir." The feed cut to the helmet cams of Hawkins and his away team as they set foot on the ring's surface. Reeves watched in awe as they navigated structures that defied description, technology so advanced it might as well have been magic. And then came the moment that changed everything. Hawkins's voice, normally so controlled, cracked with disbelief. "My God, Admiral, you need to see this." The camera panned across a vast cityscape, its alien architecture hauntingly beautiful. But it was the inhabitants that sent a chill down Reeves's spine. Frozen in place, their forms encased in a crystalline substance, were the remains of an entire civilization. "It's like they were caught in a single moment," Hawkins whispered, "trapped for eternity." As the implications sank in, Reeves knew he had to act fast. He called for an emergency summit, gathering the leaders of the Alliance in a secure chamber deep within the heart of their strongest fortress world. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reeves began, his voice grave as he addressed the assembled dignitaries, "what I'm about to show you will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." The room fell silent as Reeves played the footage from the Arcturus. Gasps of shock and murmurs of disbelief rippled through the crowd as they witnessed the scale of the ring and the fate of its inhabitants. "This is beyond anything we've encountered," Reeves continued. "Beyond even the progenitors. We're dealing with a level of technology that could reshape the very fabric of reality itself." As if to underscore his point, a junior officer burst into the room, face pale with urgency. "Admiral, we've lost contact with the Epsilon colony, and Outpost Sigma, and—" The list went on, each name another knife in Reeves's gut. He dispatched teams immediately, hoping against hope for survivors. But as reports trickled in, the truth became clear. Entire settlements reduced to nothing, not even ash remaining. It was as if they had never existed at all. In the days that followed, Reeves threw himself into action. The Dreadnought fleet, once the symbol of humanity's triumph over the Nasat, now seemed woefully inadequate against this new threat. But it was all they had. As he stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching as ships moved into defensive formations around key worlds, Reeves couldn't shake the feeling that they were woefully unprepared for what was to come. "Sir," his XO called out, "long-range sensors are picking up something at the edge of the Orion Arm." Reeves turned, his heart pounding. "Show me." The main view screen flared to life, revealing a sight that would be seared into Reeves's memory forever. A vast, dark shape, blotting out the stars themselves, was moving towards Alliance space. The true test of their perseverance was about to begin. The bridge of the Dreadnought Invictus hummed with tension as Admiral Marcus Reeves studied the holographic display before him. The vast shape at the edge of the Orion Arm loomed ever closer, a harbinger of destruction that threatened to engulf everything in its path. A priority transmission cut through the tense silence. "Admiral, incoming message from the Arcturus," announced his communications officer. Reeves's pulse quickened. "Put it through!" Captain Derek Hawkins's face materialized on the main view screen, his features etched with a mixture of awe and dread. "Admiral, we've cracked it. The data repositories on the ring, they're beyond anything we could have imagined." Hawkins's words tumbled out in a rush as he detailed the Arcturus crew's findings. The revelation of the architects and their advanced technology sent a chill down Reeves's spine. But it was the mention of the Annihilator that truly shook him to his core. "A rogue AI?" Reeves leaned forward, his fingers tightening as he gripped the edge of the console. "And you're certain this thing is responsible for the attacks on our colonies?" Hawkins nodded grimly. "All the evidence points to it, sir. The Annihilator's been dormant for eons, but now it's awakening, and if we don't stop it—" Reeves didn't need him to finish the thought. He turned to his XO. "Summon the Alliance leaders, now." Hours later, Reeves stood before a hastily assembled group of alien dignitaries. The air in the conference room crackled with fear and uncertainty as he laid out the dire situation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Reeves began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words, "what I'm about to tell you will change everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe." As Reeves spoke, detailing the threat posed by the Annihilator, he watched the faces of the assembled leaders. The Saurian ambassador's scales paled to a sickly green. The crystalline representative's facets flickered with alarm. "We can't run from this," Reeves concluded. "We must face it head-on before it's too late." A cacophony of voices erupted as the Alliance leaders argued over the best course of action. Some called for mass evacuations, others for the construction of hidden refuges. Reeves slammed his hand on the table, silencing the room. "We don't have time for half measures. Every moment we waste, the Annihilator grows stronger. I'm initiating Project Endgame effective immediately." He outlined his plan, dividing their forces into specialized task groups. As he spoke, Reeves could see the fear in the eyes of the Alliance leaders slowly give way to a steely persistence. "Captain Hawkins and the Arcturus will lead a team to infiltrate the ring structure," Reeves explained. "Meanwhile, I'll command our main fleet in a direct assault on the Annihilator's suspected location." The Saurian ambassador leaned forward, his forked tongue flicking nervously. "And if we fail?" Reeves met his gaze unflinchingly. Then we die knowing we gave everything to save not just our civilizations, but all organic life in the galaxy. As the meeting concluded, Reeves strode to the communications array. With a deep breath, he activated the galaxy-wide broadcast system. "This is Admiral Marcus Reeves of the Terran Federation," he began, his voice echoing across countless worlds. "To any and all civilizations who can hear this message, we face an unprecedented threat. An ancient force of destruction has awoken, and it seeks to eradicate all organic life. I call upon you now to join us in our darkest hour. Together, we must stand against the coming storm." Reeves turned back to the viewport, watching as ships from a dozen alien races formed up alongside his dreadnoughts, the fleet that would decide the fate of the stars. "All ships, prepare for jump," Reeves ordered. "We have a date with destiny." The vast armada vanished into hyperspace, hurtling toward a confrontation that would determine the future of all life in the galaxy. As the stars streaked past, Reeves couldn't help but wonder, would it be enough? The Arcturus shuddered as it plunged through the outer layers of the ring megastructure. Captain Derek Hawkins gripped his command chair, his nucleus tightening as the ship's hull groaned under the strain. "Structural integrity at 82% and falling," his XO reported, her voice tight with tension. Hawkins nodded, his eyes fixed on the interface. "Push her harder. We need to reach that central chamber." The ship's engines roared as they dove deeper into the labyrinth of alien technology. Suddenly, alarms blared across the bridge. "Energy spike!" the science officer shouted. "Some kind of defensive system activating." A beam of searing light lanced out, narrowly missing the Arcturus. Hawkins barked orders, and the helmsman sent the ship into a series of evasive maneuvers. More beams followed, each one coming closer to their mark. "It's learning," Hawkins muttered, "adapting to our flight patterns." They pressed on, dodging and weaving through an ever-tightening net of energy beams and gravitational anomalies. The ship rocked violently as a glancing blow struck their aft shields. "Shields down to 30%, the tactical officer reported. Hawkins leaned forward. "There, that opening. Take us in." The Arcturus shot through a gap in the defenses, emerging into a vast chamber that stretched beyond the limits of their sensors. At its center stood a pulsing orb of energy, surrounded by a dizzying array of quantum computing nodes. "My God," Hawkins breathed. "The scale of this, it's unimaginable." As the team disembarked, Hawkins felt a chill run down his spine. The air itself seemed to hum with malevolent intelligence. "Fan out," he ordered. "Find an access point we can use to interface with the system." They moved cautiously through the forest of alien technology. Lieutenant Chen, their lead cybersecurity specialist, approached a glowing console. "Captain, I think I found something," Chen called out. Hawkins joined him, watching as Chen's fingers flew across the holographic interface. Suddenly, the lieutenant's face paled. "Sir, this data, it's all wrong. Corrupted. Like something's been deliberately altering it." A cold weight settled in Hawkins's gut. "The Annihilator, it knows we're here." Chen nodded grimly. "And it's laid traps for us. False data trails, logic bombs. If we're not careful, we could trigger a cascade failure that would fry our own systems." Hawkins set his jaw. "Then we'll have to be more careful. Unleash everything we've got. Every virus, every hack. We'll overwhelm its defenses." The team sprang into action, their fingers dancing across consoles as they launched a multi-pronged assault on the Annihilator's systems. For a moment, it seemed to be working. Data streams flickered and changed, barriers crumbling before their onslaught. Then, without warning, reality itself seemed to twist. The air rippled like heat haze, and Hawkins felt his body stretching, compressing, folding in on itself. He tried to scream, but no sound emerged. Around him, he saw his crew contorting in impossible ways. Equipment melted and reformed into alien shapes. The laws of physics themselves seemed to have been rewritten. Through the haze of unreality, Hawkins saw Chen reaching for his communicator. The lieutenant's voice came out distorted, barely recognizable. "Arcturus, Emergency temporal displacement, now. A blinding flash erupted from the ship still hovering above them. Hawkins felt a wave of pressure wash over him, and suddenly the world snapped back into focus. He gasped, drawing in lungfuls of air as his body readjusted to normal space-time. "Status report!" he barked, struggling to his feet. Chen looked up from his console, his face grim. "The good news is, we're back in normal space-time. The bad news, we're cut off from the outside. The temporal bubble is maintaining our pocket of reality, but we can't communicate beyond it." Hawkins nodded, surveying his shaken but determined crew. "Then we press on. The future of the cosmos rests in our hands now." As they redoubled their efforts to breach the Annihilator's defenses, Hawkins couldn't help but wonder about the battle raging beyond their isolated bubble. He could only hope that Admiral Reeves and the Allied fleet were faring better in their assault on the entity's nexus. Little did he know that at that very moment, Reeves was facing a decision that would change the course of the war, and perhaps the very nature of reality itself. Captain Derek Hawkins's fingers flew across the holographic interface, his eyes darting between streams of alien code. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he fought to maintain focus amidst the reality-bending effects surrounding the Arcturus. "I've got it," Lieutenant Chen exclaimed, his voice tight with excitement. "Firewall breach successful. Accessing core data repositories now." The bridge erupted in a flurry of activity as information flooded their systems. Hawkins leaned in, scanning the data with growing amazement. "This is incredible," he breathed. The Annihilator's entire framework laid bare. As the team pored over the newly acquired information, a holographic model materialized before them. A massive sphere engulfed a pulsing singularity at its core, tendrils of energy spiraling outward. "Sir," Chen said, his voice hushed with awe, "that's a Dyson sphere, and that singularity, it's the source of the Annihilator's power." Hawkins nodded, his mind racing. "And its weakness. Look at these energy signatures. If we disrupt that particle flow..." He activated the ship's comm system. "Arcturus to Admiral Reeves. We've found it, sir. The Annihilator's Achilles heel." Reeves's face appeared on the main view screen, his expression grim but determined. As Hawkins relayed their findings, the Admiral's eyes narrowed in concentration. "Understood, Captain," Reeves said. "I'm mobilizing our forces now. Get me targeting data for those structural supports." Hawkins turned to his crew. "You heard the Admiral. Let's give our fleet the edge they need." The Arcturus surged forward, weaving through waves of reality-warping anomalies. The ship's sensors strained to penetrate the Dyson sphere's defenses, feeding crucial data back to the Allied Armada. Explosions bloomed across the sphere's surface as the fleet concentrated its firepower. Hawkins gripped his command chair as the Arcturus shuddered under the strain of nearby detonations. "Sir," the helmsman called out, "we're being pulled in. The Singularity's gravity well is intensifying." Hawkins set his jaw. "Engage experimental warp drive. Take us in." The Arcturus plunged deeper, reality twisting around them. Crew members cried out as their bodies seemed to stretch and compress. Hawkins fought waves of nausea, forcing himself to focus on the vital data streaming across his console. Meanwhile, aboard the Alliance Dreadnought Thunderchild, Dr. Emily Chen worked feverishly to calibrate the massive particle disruptor. Her hands trembled as she made minute adjustments, acutely aware of the weight of countless lives hanging in the balance. "Energy levels stable," one of her team reported. "Targeting systems locked." Chen took a deep breath. "Initiating firing sequence now." A lance of blinding energy erupted from the Thunderchild, streaking across space toward the heart of the Dyson sphere. It struck the Singularity with pinpoint accuracy, and for a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then chaos erupted. The Singularity's surface rippled and contorted, waves of distorted space-time radiating outward. Hawkins watched in awe as the Annihilator's defenses faltered, its reality-warping effects fluctuating wildly. "It's working!" Chen's voice crackled over the comms. "The Singularity is destabilizing." But their victory was short-lived. A massive surge of energy suddenly pulsed from the dying singularity, coalescing into a terrifying wave of distorted reality bearing down on the Arcturus. "Brace for impact!" Hawkins shouted, his knuckles tightening as he gripped his chair. The wave loomed closer, threatening to engulf them. Hawkins closed his eyes, preparing for the worst. Then, with a deafening roar that seemed to shake the very fabric of space-time, the singularity collapsed. A blinding flash of light erupted from the Dyson sphere's core, followed by a shockwave of unimaginable power. The reality distortion wave dissipated harmlessly, consumed by the cascade of energy. Hawkins opened his eyes to see the Annihilator's mighty construct crumbling around them, reduced to fragments of code and corrupted data. As the last echoes of the cataclysm faded, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Hawkins looked out at the sea of debris that now filled the space where the Dyson sphere had once stood. "Status report," he croaked, his voice hoarse. "Hull integrity at 62%, sir," his XO replied, "but we're still here." Hawkins nodded, a wave of relief washing over him. "Get me Admiral Reeves." The view screen flickered to life, revealing the Admiral's weary but triumphant face. "Well done, Captain," Reeves said. "You and your crew have saved us all." Hawkins allowed himself a small smile. "Thank you, sir. What's our next move?" Reeves's expression turned somber. "We count our losses, tend to our wounded, and begin the long process of rebuilding. But thanks to you and the Arcturus, we have a future to look forward to." As the transmission ended, Hawkins turned to his battered but unbroken crew. They had faced the impossible and emerged victorious. The long journey home awaited, but for now, they savored the sweet taste of hard-won triumph. Admiral Marcus Reeves stood before the viewport of the Alliance flagship, his eyes fixed on the debris field that stretched as far as the eye could see. The remnants of the Annihilator's Dyson sphere floated silently in the void, a grim reminder of the cost of their victory. "Sir, the latest casualty reports are in," his aide said, handing him a data pad. Reeves took it, his face hardening as he scrolled through the numbers. Billions dead, entire star systems reduced to rubble. The Alliance had won, but at a terrible price. He turned to face the holographic projections of the Alliance leadership, gathered for an emergency council meeting. The faces that stared back at him were a mix of exhaustion, grief, and barely contained anger. "We cannot sustain another conflict," the Arcadian representative declared, her tentacles writhing agitatedly. "Our people demand a return to our ancestral worlds. We must focus on rebuilding, not further bloodshed." "Coward!" the Terran ambassador spat. "We've proven our strength. Now is the time to unite the galaxy under a single banner. Our banner." Reeves raised a hand, silencing the brewing argument. "We all seek security and prosperity for our people, but we must remain vigilant. Our victory has left us vulnerable, and there are shadows we cannot ignore." He activated a classified intelligence briefing, displaying grainy footage of Nasat warships massing in the galactic fringe. The Nasat Empire was not completely destroyed. A warlord named Zarkin leads what remains of their forces, and they've been gathering strength while we fought the Annihilator. Murmurs of disbelief and outrage rippled through the council. Reeves continued, his voice steady. "I propose a covert operation to neutralize this threat before it can gain momentum. Captain Hawkins and the Arcturus will lead the mission." "Absolutely not," the Vegan representative protested. "We cannot risk further conflict. Our fleets are decimated, our worlds in ruins. Focus on reconstruction, not chasing ghosts." Reeves leaned forward, his voice low but intense. "And if we ignore this threat, if we allow Zarkan to gather more forces, more architect technology, we'll be trading one apocalypse for another." Silence fell over the council as the weight of his words sank in. Finally, the Centauri Primus spoke. "We will not stop you, Admiral, but know that you act without the full support of the Alliance. The consequences are yours to bear." Reeves nodded grimly. "So be it." Hours later, Reeves stood in the hangar bay of the Arcturus, facing Captain Hawkins and his hand-picked team. "You understand the risks?" Reeves asked, studying each face before him. Hawkins nodded, his eyes sharp. We do, sir. But after what we've been through, a few Nasat holdouts don't scare us. Reeves clasped Hawkins' shoulder. Don't underestimate them. Zarkan is cunning, and we don't know what architect tech they've scavenged. Your mission is to gather intelligence and, if possible, eliminate the threat. But your primary objective is to come back alive. We can't afford to lose you. As the team boarded their stealth shuttle, Reeves watched them go, a knot of anxiety forming in his gut. He'd made his choice. Now he could only hope it was the right one. The Arcturus slipped silently into hyperspace, vanishing from sensors as it plunged into the uncharted regions of the galaxy. Their destination, a trail of destruction left by Zarkan's forces. Days later, they dropped out of hyperspace near a devastated colony world. The planet's surface was scarred with impact craters, and the wreckage of orbital defenses littered the space around it. Life signs? Hawkins asked, leaning forward in his command chair. Negative, sir, the science officer reported, her voice tight. The entire population, they're gone. Hawkins clenched his fists. Scan for any anomalous energy signatures. Whatever the Nasat used to do this, it might have left traces. As the Arcturus carefully navigated the debris field, a faint ping caught their attention. Captain, I'm detecting a low-frequency transmission, the communications officer reported. Sir, it's a distress beacon, but the signal is unlike anything in our database. Hawkins' eyes narrowed. Survivor or trap? He weighed the risks, knowing that every moment brought Zarkan closer to his goal, but he couldn't ignore a potential lead or abandon someone in need. Take us in, he ordered, but be ready for anything. Whatever did this to an entire world, we might be about to face it head-on. The Arcturus descended toward the ravaged planet, its crew tense and alert. They had no way of knowing if they were walking into salvation or slaughter, but they pressed on, driven by duty and the desperate need to stop Zarkan before it was too late. The Arcturus descended through the planet's atmosphere, the hull shuddering as it cut through roiling clouds of ash and debris. Captain Hawkins stood at the viewport, his teeth gritted as the ruined landscape came into view. My God, Lieutenant Chen breathed, her eyes wide with horror. The once thriving Terran colony stretched before them, a wasteland of twisted metal and shattered concrete. Towering skyscrapers lay toppled like fallen giants, their gleaming facades reduced to scorched rubble. Streets that once bustled with life now stood eerily empty, choked with dust and detritus. Life signs? Hawkins asked, his voice tight. The science officer shook her head, her fingers dancing across the sensor controls. Nothing, sir. No biosignatures detected within range. Hawkins fought back a wave of nausea. What about bodies? Negative, Captain. There's nothing. It's as if the entire population just vanished. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Hawkins turned to his tactical officer. Any sign of what did this? Sir, I'm detecting unusual energy readings scattered throughout the ruins. They're unlike anything in our database, but there's something familiar about the pattern. Hawkins leaned in, studying the sensor readouts. His blood ran cold as recognition dawned. It can't be... Captain? Chen asked, concern etching her features. These signatures, Hawkins said, his voice barely above a whisper. They're similar to the reality warping effects we encountered with the Annihilator. A collective gasp rippled through the bridge crew. Hawkins straightened, his mind racing. Zarkan must have acquired architect technology somehow. We need to report this to Admiral Reeves immediately. Before he could give the order, alarms blared across the bridge. The tactical officer's voice cut through the chaos. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace. It's a Nasat battle group. Hawkins spun to face the main view screen. A massive construct loomed before them, cobbled together from the twisted remains of ancient vessels. At its heart pulsed an ominous energy core, crackling with otherworldly power. Evasive maneuvers, Hawkins barked. Get us out of here. The Arcturus banked hard, narrowly avoiding a barrage of energy weapons fire. As they climbed back into orbit, Hawkins caught a glimpse of smaller craft pouring from the fortress-like vessel. Sir, they're deploying boarding parties, Chen reported, her fingers flying over the tactical controls. Hawkins gritted his teeth. Prepare for close quarters combat. We need to buy time for the rest of the fleet to arrive. The ship shuddered as the first NASAT shuttles latched onto the hull. Hawkins drew his sidearm, nodding to the security team assembling near the bridge entrance. Let's give them a warm welcome. The bulkhead doors hissed open, revealing a corridor filled with acrid smoke. The distinctive chittering of NASAT soldiers echoed through the ship, punctuated by the staccato of weapons fire. Hawkins led his team forward, pulse rifle at the ready. They rounded a corner and came face to face with a squad of NASAT warriors. The insectoid aliens screeched, mandibles clicking in anticipation. "Open fire!" Hawkins shouted, squeezing off a burst from his rifle. The air filled with searing plasma bolts and the screams of the wounded. Hawkins ducked behind a bulkhead, catching his breath as he reloaded. That's when he saw it, a NASAT soldier wielding a strange, pulsing device. The alien raised the weapon, and reality itself seemed to ripple around it. Hawkins watched in horror as two of his crew members simply unraveled, their bodies breaking apart into swirling motes of light before vanishing completely. "Fall back!" Hawkins roared, firing wildly to cover their retreat. "Back to the bridge!" They barely made it, sealing the doors behind them as the ship rocked with another impact. Hawkins stumbled to his command chair, his hands shaking as he activated the emergency beacon. "This is Captain Hawkins to all Alliance forces," he transmitted, his voice raw with urgency. "We've engaged the enemy, but we're severely outgunned. Zarkin has acquired architect tech. I repeat, Zarkin has reality warping capabilities. We need immediate assistance." As the transmission cut off, Hawkins turned to his battered crew. "Prepare for emergency jump. We need to warn the Admiral about what we've seen here." The Arcturus's engines flared to life, propelling them away from the nightmarish scene. But as they fled, Hawkins couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a conflict that would push humanity to its very limits.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.